This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call the Twilight Zone.
And now, Mr. Serling. On the Twilight Zone next comes more exciting work from the typewriter of Richard Matheson. Our show is called Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. William Shatner and Christine White share performing honors in an aircraft. But it's the kind of flight none of us have ever experienced, and I might add, I hope none of us ever will. Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, next time out on The Twilight Zone.
Welcome everyone to the Holodeck, our intrepid crusade through things that are not so Trek. And this week we are on The Twilight Zone, still with Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, the probably most infamous episode for Star Trek fans, being that it stars one young William Shatner, very young William Shatner here. And also, fun fact, this was directed by Richard Donner, none other than, and people might recognise him. Which Superman was his? His was 2, wasn't it?
1 and 2, I believe.
Oh, it was 1 and 2, was it?
Multiple.
Yeah. So, very credited film director here for this one. Also, I mean, I'm going to always ask you every week, why did you pick this one in our lineup? I think I know why, but any further evidence?
Well, this one's a little further in our watch along with the other Star Trek alum episodes, but you could have put it as episode 1. It's probably the most well-known. I think I said beforehand, it's been referenced everywhere. I actually looked up on YouTube, they do a supercut of all the references of this, and it's 20 minutes long of just like scene, all these different shows, just referencing, parodying it. So, you have to do this one. But it's in the Trek alum bucket because much like Nick of Time, Shatner kind of carries this one. And it has a lot of good stuff going on, but Shatner is just pitch perfect in this.
Yeah, no, it's time to show up that just like with George Takei and with Gary Simmons' actor from the previous week's episode, Star Trek is a great vehicle for a great story. It can be a really good character vehicle, but it feels like there's something about this format of 25 minutes of just a shot in the arm of a person's acting, and it's I'm not going to say that Shatner was he completely disappeared into the role, because there were a few Shatnerisms here, but it's guess what? An actor is an actor is an actor. You can't completely, unless you're Daniel Day-Lewis, you don't completely lose all of who you are. That being said, I did not see Captain Kirk in this episode, which is, guess what? That's often I think a criticism that's made of Shatner is that he's playing himself. I think what was it, James Doohan once said, I like Captain Kirk, or I just cast him William Shatner. But I feel like he did a really good job of realizing this character and making me feel like he was someone very, very different from Kirk. I was really, really impressed, actually.
Yeah, he definitely had a lot more, because we watched him in A Nick of Time previously, which was another iteration on his character, and this was a nervous character. Or what is his name? Bob. Well, I don't know. Did we ever get the
Bob
surname?
Wilson, I believe.
Yeah. So. Yeah, Bob Wilson. So, he was very much we got the impression early on he's a nervous flyer, and that actually turned out to be a little bit more than just being a nervous flyer, having a mental breakdown. He definitely got a good sense of his unease as he walked in. We said before, we're so used to Shatner playing these bold characters, Captain Kirk, Denny Crane, TJ Hooker, all very sort of almost ego-fed roles, but this is definitely a play on him doing something else, and he was really good at it. I was pleasantly surprised.
So there's a lot of things about this that are a little bit different than what we've been doing. A lot of big morality play type, look at humanity kind of thing, and this was not that at all. It was, all right. So there is the element of mental illness, which they do a remake of this in the '80s with John Lithgow, and they kind of completely sidestep. I don't think they even mention any kind of mental issue. It's just the fear of flying, which that is the other big aspect of it. So I guess it does kind of tie in. Actually, my favorite scene, I jump right in with my bread, is when they play along with him. He's like, "Don't you see what's going on?" He's like, "We don't want to scare the people. We have seen them." He's like, "Of course you have." And then he freezes and he gives him this look, and he goes into just the most petty little bitch ever. And I identify with. He's like, "I'll see this plane crash first. I'll see it burn to the ground before I let you make a fool of me." And I was like, yes, that because I don't identify with the fear of flying thing. I don't have that issue at all. But that particular moment, I'm like, I would be as petty as I possibly could be if you treated me like an idiot. So I did. That was just indelible for me.
It was a good transition of reactions from him as well. We got like a good range of like it very much felt like someone was behind the scene just saying, okay, today in drama school you need to go from being like reassured to petulant to submissive in one scene, and you could see the range of emotions go over his face. But it works. It's effective. I don't know if we're particularly looking at Mr. Shatner through a fine magnifying glass because we're just like, what are we seeing here? Which we are kind of a little bit, but it was.
It's a 25-minute portrait of a man's mental breakdown.
Yeah.
Like you kind of have to be examining him.
Or
and it's
is
like
it a mental breakdown?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? But like the visual language, especially of the 1960s, is so just like it's brought up multiple times that the smallest TV sets at the time, like you have to have those aggressive zoom ins and like the full shot of just his face because like guess what? Yeah. Otherwise you cannot count on a 4K 75-inch screen to capture every pore in his face. It's like, no, Shatner is of the era where you have to emote like that, otherwise people do not get what you're doing. And yet even still he manages to find a lot of new ones. Like I feel like I can't mention there's still a bit of Shatnerism here and there. You can't escape the bigness of it. But it didn't feel like there was any ego going on like that. It was a very I don't know. I appreciated the slow sort of like the way it opened up with what the sanitarium told me. It's underconfidence to manifesting his nervousness and all that kind of stuff. Like that kind of thing of I've been diagnosed, so therefore there's something treatable, I'm fixable type thing, and then just that didn't last long.
So tell me, do either of you guys have fear or nervousness when you fly? Or have you ever?
Yeah, I'm not. Like, I've been on plenty of planes. I've been on holiday around that. But given the choice of, like, going on a plane or not, I would very much rather not. And I think a lot of it is, for myself, is lack of control. If I drive on holiday or I drive anywhere, I am in control of the vehicle, even though, accidents can happen any time and, it can always not be your fault. But at least I've kind of saying, done my bit. But I have the kind of, like, I'm strapped into a metal tube, like, 20,000 feet above sea level. And I've read too many things about plane crashes, and I hate this. So yeah, I do get a little bit of nervousness with plane flights, but it hasn't stopped me going on holiday. Or eventually, I just get that kind of like gripping the seat moment when we take off. I'm like, I'm not going to be settled until I'm down on the ground.
So what did you think? Sorry, Stars. What did you think when that door popped off and he's hanging out with the gun? Like, did you have some kind of emotional reaction?
I mean, it was more like. I'm surprised the whole everyone in the plane didn't immediately just like rush out and like the whole thing. You expect the things to drop from the air. It's very TV or especially 50s, 60s TV for him to just hang out the window and then pop back in, and then everyone's like, "Oh, it's fine." If that actually happened on an air flight, which it has fairly recently, it would be much more of a serious issue. The less said about Boeing's construction philosophy, the better, really.
Thanks to dating this episode.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's one of those things where I couldn't help but think of Point Break. Like have you ever fired your gun up into the air and screamed? And it was a little bit overshot. I feel like, but again, it's the visual language of the time. But it's interesting because it's portrayed as this like this awful thing. This like you kind of think he's gonna die because it looks like he's snapped his back or whatever. But there's also an element almost of catharsis to it, of just like, well, it's done now. I took care of the problem. I took the plunge. I acted the crazy man, and now the world can judge me on its own terms. There's almost a relief to it, which you kind of see come through in the coda. I feel like the music was doing a lot of the heavy lifting for that, because like Shatner does a great job of like playing like I have to work out the plan bit by bit by bit. I really did appreciate him making sure that his wife was nowhere near. Go to that. Yeah, I was cute. Like I feel like I appreciate that.
I got to remember to come back around to that point, but I don't think it was overshot. That was a very claustrophobic set, and they do a decent job of making it claustrophobic. But part of the reason why they can spend all that money on the practical effects on the outside is because they had one set. It was just the cockpit, and then it was out. So they gave us a shot close up on them, maybe an angle from someone standing, the stewardess standing there, one out the window, and then we get a great low angle shot when he goes to grab the gun, and that's kind of it off the top of my head. So there's only so much you can do in that confined
Oh
space.
no,
And
no,
I feel
that,
like
that
all
was
the
fine.
variety really helps spice that up.
Oh no, the only bit that I think was overshot was the bit where he's hanging out the side of the plane. I thought that was a little bit overdone, like just because like the physics of it and like
I
the
thought it was
like,
beautiful.
like
All right, well,
I said, it made me think of Point Break. That's what it made me think of, like like type thing. But like, yeah, like I said, I can't impose a modern visual language on it. Like they would do it differently now, but I think that especially considering the time, the budget, and what they were doing with the scene, like I feel like it worked. It worked.
So all these nerds on IMDb have a section for goofs, like things that a
Mm.
show messed up, and so they have a list of them here. You know, the emergency window because of pressurization wouldn't pop out; it only pops in not when it's in motion, and the depressurization things would be flying around. If you fired a gun because of the speed of the airplane, it would not. And I'm like, you nerds, that doesn't matter because people who have a fear of flying, like they have pictured themselves many times. Well, what if the window pops out, and then what do I do? Am I going to get sucked out? Am I going to fall to my death? And in that moment, like you're not thinking about the physics of it. You're thinking just the primal fear of it. So I think it worked great. It really was like hokey, but in the best possible way. Where he's got like one leg tethering him to the plane while he's firing shots off at this guy in a ridiculous fursuit.
Yeah, let's talk about the monkey. Or the ape creature that was drifting in and out of the
Literally.
scenes. Like, bear in
monkey
mind
in a
we're
room.
watching this on a 1080p Blu-ray copy of this episode. Like, and I imagine watching this back in 1960. And I really love the scene where you see it for the first time and you see it approaching from the edge of the wing, and it's very dull shadow.
Good.
That was very good.
So that's Kino. That's actual Kino.
Yeah, but as it gets closer, you kind of realize, oh, it's a man in a costume. But I imagine that being a lot more freaky back in the day. A lot more.
Well, like I think like I feel like they did overshow the monster a little bit. Like I feel like it would have been nicer if you didn't look at it and go, "Oh, that's like a Yeti from Doctor Who." You know, that's this thing in the fucking underground. I definitely think you're absolutely right. Like that first scene where you see it shrouded in shadow and there's just like the shape on the wing, and I feel like if I were gonna just trim up this a little bit, like far be it for me to fucking tell Richard Donner how to do his job, of course. But like, if I were doing it, I'd have it so that you wouldn't see a full face; you would just see the eye, because I feel like that was kind of the freakiest part of it, almost like pressed up against the wing like that. Like, I feel like that'd be a bit more emotive, a bit more like because there's this constant because this is basically a horror episode, right? There's this constant like
It's a romance.
pressure between Shatner and the plane. There's this constant tension between when do you show the monster versus when you don't, right? And it's like there are certain things where you cannot show the monster until it's the very end. Like I feel like Alien, the first Alien does that a lot. You don't really see the alien in its full entirety for more than maybe like 2 minutes in the first Alien movie. The rest of it is all parts of it, or the shadow, or the actions that it's done. But then on the complete other opposite end of the scale, you have The Thing. And it's like, The Thing would not work if you did not see the fucked up shit that it turns into. And it kind of depends on the tone you're going for. I feel like here, where it's maybe an externalization of mental illness, maybe it's something real, I would have wanted to go with something a bit more oblique, a bit more... It's not quite sure if it's real or not, like flitting in. I thought that the very first time you see it like pull off the wing was like, okay, that's fucking weird looking.
Yeah.
Dude, that wire work is hilarious.
The first time I thought it was alright, but then every other subsequent time I was like, okay, that looks goofy. So that's one of those instances where I think a little bit of less would have been a bit more there. But overall, like for the time period and what they were probably working with on the budget, it was pretty good.
And
I think that's convincing.
Yeah, I enjoyed almost the sort of relationship between the two characters in the sense of Kirk and the being, which I think the end of the episode, spoilers if you haven't watched it, but go watch it before watching this. But you kind of confirmed that it was real because it's we pan down to the broken part of the wing. The fuselage is torn up. As shown outside of his perspective.
But what if it just got struck by lightning?
Exactly. But I think it's kind of assumed that actually no, he wasn't. All along he was on the right side of it, and that's why he's so relieved at the end. But I like the relationship because the famous scene where he's pressed up against the window going, who are you? And you're like, oh, you're a crazy person, you're not going to believe any of this is happening, I'm just going to float away and tease you. And you kind of always get like a little sort of drama between the two interactions, mainly focused on, because you think, as the viewer, there's like, oh, he's just imagining this. You're trying to second guess the whole time. Like, is he delusional? Is he using his fear of flying as a mental breakdown, or could possibly be a real being? Not in the Twilight Zone.
I do feel like they picked. Oh, so you go.
William Shatner called the Gremlins look a, quote, ridiculous furry costume in his autobiography. Writer Richard Matheson said, quote, this thing looked more like a panda bear.
Yeah.
Have you guys played the game Amnesia: The Dark Descent? I think it's like must be at least 15 years old by now.
Yeah.
I played like the first hour, I think, yeah.
That video game is artwork. It is masterclass in suspense and horror. It's very good. And the entire premise of that video game is that you don't have weapons. There's a shadow monster following you, and all you can do is try to escape it, outrun it, outwit it. And so the reason that works is you don't see it face to face. You don't have a machine gun filled with ammo going da 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 da. It's suspense. And you were so kind, actually, on the direction stars, because this is a part that sucked for me, and they just, terrible choice. We're 9 minutes in. The episode's like 23, 24 minutes. 9 minutes in, bam, there it is, right in the audience's face. And first of all, it's ridiculous, so that doesn't help it at all. It just looks goofy, but even if it looked great, why are you blowing your load that early? You gotta keep people on the edge of their seat. Plus, the entire premise of this story is he crazy, or is he really seen it? And if you just, pull it way back, dial it way back, show us the shadow, show us it messing around out there, and let the audience try to figure out, is it real or not, instead of just slammed it in your face. I thought that was a terrible choice. And you could do a reveal like that at the end, because it is a fun shock moment, and it's been, parodied to hell and back. Everyone knows that moment. But doing it at the 9 minute mark was mind-boggling to me. I can't imagine why they did that.
Yeah, that's what I kind of meant. Whereas I think less would have been a bit more here. If I was going to do it, like I said, like far be it for me to fucking tell Richard Donner what to do. But I feel
that's
like
what we're here for.
Yeah, is he even alive? An easy fix would be just make it so that the engine that it's fucking with is the one that's furthest away, so that you are forced to just be in shadow. And I honestly feel like it's one of those things where if you remade it now and you just like kept it verbatim, and you could even get like Shatner, if you could literally get everything exactly the same, but you did it now, I would kind of want to keep it in black and white, because I feel like that kind of suits the tone and the visuals. Oh, yeah. This is a monster I think you could do really well with CGI, because you could do some really fucked up things with like shadows and weird shapes that can't exist, to just amp up that uncanny factor and make you think, no, it's just like weird shadows and things on the wing. Like, you could do some interesting stuff like that. Whereas here, they're constrained by the fact that it has to be a guy on a suit, and it's like, I feel like they do a really good job with that shadow shot in the beginning, but like, there's only so much you can do that before it's like, okay, well, you got to visually like vary it up a little bit.
If you look at like some modern horror films as well, and they get very clever with how they portray horror. There was a good if you ever seen them, the Corridor Crew, they do good and bad VFX shots, and they occasionally tackle horror movies. And I forget which one it was, but there was one there where they were like definitely playing with like the shapes of doorways and the perspective of various. Is it a creature coming through? No, it's just a bookshelf. Like, but it's angled in the way that it gives you the jump scare without anything be there. You can definitely do a lot of good. And I like a lot of, pinging back to Star Trek. There are things they've done there, like in season 3 of Discovery, you had the creature, Sukal's sort of creature that was blocking him from entering the real world. That kind of ghostly, shadowy figure that was done very well. It could even be something similar to that, rather than be something more tangible. But I'd be very interesting to see the John Lithgow version of this.
Oh, it's the 80s thing. 80s.
Is it really?
It's 80s.
Zach's left playing in the background.
You could ever imagine. Yeah, it's really funny.
Check that
out. Dan Aykroyd's on the other side of the plane going, I'm a Ghostbuster.
Somewhat Eddie Murphy is
but
piloting.
yeah, I don't mind being a little harder, because William Tuttle, the director of makeup or whatever role he has, is actually very good in the run of Twilight Zone. And in a couple episodes from now, it's one we've already recorded that we're going to release later. We're complimenting the great age makeup on one of the actors. So
Oh yeah, that was amazing. Yeah.
he generally does a really good job. So for this to be just so goofy, and part of it is, an era thing, but I think he could do better. Also, principal photography for this was shot in 2 days. They did a lot of stuff overnight.
Oh,
kept
wow.
kept
Really?
people overnight for stuff. Normally they're 3 day shoots. Some of them go to 5 and longer. So this was really crammed in there, and I don't know what might have suffered because of that. But that
Well, if
didn't
they were
help things.
working to a very strict timetable, maybe the suit just wasn't ready, and they was like, "Well, fuck it, just throw it out there and go." Maybe. We need
Sorry,
some kind of Twilight Zone Bible to go with.
I want to circle back around to the fact that, which I hadn't really thought about, that he made sure his wife was safe first.
Mm.
And is that because he's in control of his faculties and he really isn't losing it? And so he's like, is he a hero in this? He risks his own life to try to save the plane because he knows what he sees. And then at the end, by the way, this episode gets an automatic point for Matheson throwing that little tidbit in at the end. We pan down, we see the plate pulled back. If that wasn't there, this would have been just a flatter episode. I feel like that little twist just adds so much.
Well, yeah, because you talked in the past about how Twilight Zone episodes are a twist, and then there's a twist. And it's like the first twist is, okay, we're actually going to have to fucking pop the door. Okay, we're actually going to do that. Because you spent the entire episode wondering if he's going to, because they set it up so early. And then the second twist is, no, there was maybe something going on there. And it's like, I feel like it's just enough that you're like, because it's not like claw marks. It's not like blood on the plane. It's just, that looks like it's been fucked up, and it's like, you could have been struck by lightning for all we know, and it's like such a minor impact that like they didn't even notice. But it could be a gremlin, and that is, I feel like there's a just enough restraint that, like you said, instant point for that. I feel like that's very well done.
What do you guys think? Was he really seeing that?
I think he was. I think I am of the belief that the fuselage was pulled up in a certain way that matches to what he was seeing, and I feel like the twist on the twist there is that the Twilight Zone was actually not being as there was no subtext for once. It literally was, and it was a freaky story about something that was unbelievable that was playing games with someone that saw him. So they mostly come at night.
Yeah, it is interesting because it's like, because if you think about if you run with the explanation that it's just an externalization of his mental illness, then why does his brain believe that just shooting it with a gun will fix it? Like, I feel like most of the time you would, like I feel like if it were an externalization of his mental illness only, he'd want to he'd imagine himself like going out and like fighting it on the plane or like pushing it off or whatever. But like, no, he shoots it with a gun, which is a very conventional thing to do. And it reacts very conventionally, which is interesting, even though it's some kind of weird pixie that can fly around and has complete control over gravity and doesn't seem to understand planes. There's a weird amount of characterization this thing gets. Like, I really enjoyed the little shots of it kind of reaching forward and like trying to touch the propeller and then go, Like, I don't know, I just kind of enjoy when you don't have a monster that is always like they aren't just like going around going like it just was kind of doing
intelligent,
that.
yeah.
But there's an element of curiosity here, which is like in its way a bit more terrifying, because curiosity implies intelligence, which is like that's always the more terrifying monster. But I don't know, but if you ask me whether or not I think it was real,
That's what I'm asking. Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I feel like they straddle
You
that
don't
line.
need to
Like,
answer. Yeah, it's a great straddle.
You will be marked.
yeah, I feel it really does straddle that line really, really well. Where it's like, I can come up with a million explanations in my head for why that panel is pulled up. I'm sure the flight engineer could too. But there's a really easy explanation.
One of the disappointing things about the Twilight Zone series is I feel like a full 2/3 of the episode could just be answered with, yeah, the guy's insane and none of that really happened. It was in his mind. And it's kind of disappointing because it's such a reductive thing, but it actually that could just be the resolution. It was all in his mind. And that's lame But the fact that they add the doubt is nice. We get a
Yeah.
lot of shots where after the gremlins already peeled it back, then in the next shot everything's flat again, which leads me to think I don't think he bent the metal back down perfectly flat. I think the fact that it goes back and forth in the cuts means that it's really in his mind. So, but it doesn't really matter because they do a good enough job of spreading that seed of doubt.
Would you like a fun behind-the-scenes story?
Always.
Yeah, here we go. During a break in the tight shooting schedule, Shatner was hanging out with actor Ed Burns, who happened to be visiting the set. Director Richard Donner said, "I hear this screaming and yelling and everything, and I run back to see Burns and Shatner fighting. And then they went behind the body of the airplane, and all of a sudden, I see Shatner fall off the wing and all the way to the bottom. It's concrete, and he hit the ground." Donner said, "I thought he was dead." Donner said that when he ran to the fallen motionless figure, thinking it was dead or grievously injured William Shatner, he was greeted with laughter the moment he realised it was just an articulated human dummy the two men had found in another part of the studio and threw off the wing. Donner later joked, "Honestly, my first reaction was, don't tell me I have to shoot the whole thing over again." I love that story. That's really good. I love the fact that he thought like Shatner and Ed Burns would meet and they did instantly have a fight. Like,
Yeah, no, like you were saying that, and I'm like, yeah, no, Shatner would get into a fight with another actor over that kind of shit.
I do remember reading in one of Shatner's books about Leonard Nimoy that he used to prank him a lot on the set of the original Star Trek, the original series too. So I guess that was his MO. That must have been why he was so endeared to his co-workers.
Indeed. Okay, I think it's time. I mean, I know, Otto, you've done yours, but feel free to repeat. Let's have our
Bread.
Gentlemen, what was your bread? The moment in the
That's
episode.
much too low a bread.
The moment in the episode that stood out to you and sort of really stuck in your mind. I think mine has got to be the completely inattentive air marshal, who just, that whole scene where Shatner pretends to drop the whatever it was he dropped, like a pack of cigarettes or something, and then very nervously lean on the chair really close and just slide the gun out and be the most least subtle thief ever for an air marshal, who I can only presume was sleeping to let that happen.
We have to hope he was.
We really do.
We also have to hope that the people sitting in the seat right there were also sleeping, because otherwise the implication is that there's a guy who's just sitting there like, no, I want to see where this goes.
I wonder if they could have finagled some scene where he slips that sleeping pill into the air marshal's drink instead of his, and then. But I loved it the way it was. That was a great. Well,
a little bit of
shot.
cheese. Like a good old slice of cheese. A little bit of cheese.
It's a good slice. I think this episode was a good slice between kind of campy moments like that and a little bit of horror. I think it had a mix. Probably not intended at the time, but with sort of today's viewpoint, it kind of comes across to that. Also, what was your bread again? I've forgotten already.
It's when the co-pilot or whatever pretends to play along with him.
Right, yeah.
Oh yes, we've seen him out, but we can't. Of course you have. And he freezes, and his little mouth contracts, his little eyes start to squint.
20-second reaction shot, don't we?
You can see that it's because it's so good. The beads of sweat on his forehead. He's like, I understand, and then he's like, I'll see us crash first, you asshole. And it was so good, dude. It was. If I try to think of the original series run of Star Trek, could I think of a scene where Shatner just acts better than that? The range of emotions he goes through in the span of 15 seconds is
in TOS maybe not, but I think in the movies, yes. I think in Wrath
really
Khan
good.
and Search for Spock where he gets something similar. I'm thinking specifically of the scene in Search for Spock where he finds out that David's dead. I feel like that's kind of a similar play of emotion. What's my red? Did you play the clip, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure we got to get our Avery Brooks in. I demand our Avery Brooks.
He gets 3 cents every time one of our episodes is aired.
Oh, well, keep on hitting it then. Keep on hitting it. What's my? Can I just say Shatner for the entire episode? Because it's
Sure.
Nick of Time. I feel like was a good use of Shatner, and you don't often think of Shatner as an anxious actor. But between Nick of Time and here, it's no, he plays it very well. He's very good at straddling that line of hysterical, sympathetic, quiet, loud. It's just that knife edge, and he pushes it a little bit too far. But then again, that's what mental illness and instability is like. It's like having dealt with people who are like that at my work in retail. It's like, yeah, no, they kind of have these. They're erratic. They're peaks and valleys, and it's like he just captures it very well. You're constantly watching what he's doing, which I appreciate, and it's like obviously like the entire episode is framed around him. You know, and I feel fucking so bad for his wife because like she was having a fucking time. But it's also the little humanizing moments that they give him, where it's like he's just like a very physical actor, where he's like grasping her hands. The fact that he makes sure that she isn't around when he pops the door, just like they do a lot to humanize this character. He would otherwise be like, oh, he's a weakling. He's like, you know, even for 1963, there's a lot of sympathy going on here. I feel for someone who is just, you know, like it'd be very easy to be like macho. Oh, you just get over it, be strong. And it's like, no, there's kind of a bit more sympathy to the fact this guy's a legitimate problem.
The suddenness works because every time he snaps out of what he's concerned about and realizes what other people must be thinking of him, that's when the suddenness kicks in and he catches himself. And Shatner is going to do that anyway in his role. So the fact that he does it here where it fits, it makes it a good marriage.
Okay, gentlemen.
But yeah, that's my bread. It's Shatner.
How
Shatner
about-
is bread.
Shatner is bread. How about?
Well, if that's the best they could do, this should last about 5 minutes.
5 minutes. We will retrace our steps and figure out what's going on.
You've got 5 minutes. Do it.
Gentlemen, how would you change the last 5 minutes of this episode to suit your own desires? Stars, let's start with you.
Bugger, I was hoping you wouldn't pick me.
That's why I picked you first.
Of course, you can see it in my eyes. You can see my averting my eyes like a flight engineer, nervously hoping you won't notice my lies.
Oh.
I'm trying to think.
Well,
Okay.
Okay,
You know what?
Okay, go on.
You know what? I'll go with a simple twist, but I think it would be effective. Is you dial it back. I'm trying to place the exact moment, but he wakes his wife up. She you know, like you, Bob, you're being crazy, and then she sees it, but then no one else does, and it's only those two. And suddenly you get like a little bit of a back and forth of like what you've been seeing at the entire thing. And then like they both just go, and you see her just undergo like a mini spiral. Maybe she goes along with it, maybe she doesn't. Maybe that makes the air marshal scene a little bit more, a little bit less ridiculous if she's like playing the distraction for it. I don't know, like you could play it in a load of different ways, but the idea that someone else sees it and then even I think if you did that and then you don't reveal that the plane is damaged at the end, that's a very different twist of a different. It's like, okay, so the plane isn't actually damaged, but then why the fuck did she see it? And it's like that's an entirely different twist of a different question. It's like, what is this localized insanity field around these two seats? You know, like
Cool.
I feel like that's an interesting. Like you'd be like, wait, what? I feel like that would be an interesting alternative take on it.
Turns out those seats were on an Indian burial site in the plane or something like that.
The gremlin was actually her massive wig come to life.
Yeah. There go big. How about you, Otto?
Shoot it!
Last 5 minutes.
I didn't think of these ahead of time this time, so that's why I completely spaced while Stars was giving his. Although it was very clever, Stars. So well done.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Push the reveal way late. Push it to like a minute before they're done with the plane, and finally it gets close, and he pulls back the curtain, and it's clearly Shatner, but in some deranged makeup. So he's got I don't know
he's
some
looking at
stuff
himself.
on his face and his hair and everything, but you can still tell it's him, and he freaks out and pops the. No, we're not going to pop the plane because why would he shoot himself? He freaks out. He has like a breakdown, and then we cut to him in the straitjacket. And as they're pulled away, we do that. I really love the shot of the doubt with the panel pulled back. We see the panel pulled back, and there's some kind of identifier, either glove he was wearing or piece of his fabric also there. So that just reinforces the point that someone was definitely there. It wasn't just wind pulling or lightning pulling back the panel. But so I think that would give you even fewer answers than you had in this version.
And then it pulls out, and it's the Truman Show, says Idol.
Oh, now he's got to think of another one.
God damn it! No. I don't really know. Like I've been going through like a couple of different ones in my head. Like one was just like I was going to go for the comedy angle that like he looks up and 1 minute is the alien monkey man, then he goes look what's out there, and then he looks and someone goes, oh yeah, no, that's Ray, our aircraft technician. He looks again, it's just someone on the wing with a hammer just going, yeah, just fix the plane. They haven't even taken off yet, and he's having like a complete psychotic episode. Like he thinks they're in the air and he's that afraid of it, he's actually still on the runway, it's hammering down with rain, and he's seeing this figure on the plane. It's just the technician. That's about as much as I could come up with, I think, for this one. So sorry to be disappointing.
I don't like though when they end it as he is just crazy, because too many of them could be interpreted that way. I feel like what really elevates it is the fact that if you were in the Twilight Zone, something completely improbable really could be happening, and
I wasn't happy with that.
Makes it fun.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, if I'm going to replace the twist of like there not being any damage to the plane, you have to, but then explain why the wife also went crazy, because that coming out where it's like, well, that's a different, like I feel like you're right. You kind of need a little bit of you need a second twist.
I'll hand in my resignation tomorrow. I'm so sorry. I've let you down. Okay, how about we go on to our...
I can show you my rating code.
Schiller rating 3.5. Associational rating norm -3. That's much too low a rating.
Is not accustomed to seeing an unsatisfactory rating on a member
Member
of my crew.
on member of my crew.
Yes, unsatisfactory rating on the member of my bread. What would you rate this? So we are lacking down this week. So usually it would fall to myself, but stars, I'm going to give you.
No.
No.
I do all the tracks. It's your fucking job.
Damn, because I have one and I'm not too happy with it. I'm failing at all rates tonight. I don't know if you've got anything auto, if you want to throw a Schiller rating into the mix.
No, I'm not going to save you this time.
Okay, I'll go for my slightly disappointing one. How many flying monkeys mutilating airplane fuselage would you give this out of 10?
You have one job on this stupid show. It's stupid, but you're gonna do it, okay?
Let's start with you. Go auto. I'm interested to see what you rate this after all our arguments.
I thoroughly enjoy this episode, which I usually don't. I don't know. I just kind of. I remember reading a comment today. Someone asked their wife to watch Lord of the Rings with them, like the 3-hour movie, and she said this was the biggest waste of time piece of shit I've ever seen.
Who is she?
And someone in the comments was like, well, did you really think they'd change your mind after you talked it through with them? And they're like, yes, sometimes actually all it takes is reframing your mind. And I feel like that's what happened today. Is I just enjoyed it, and part of it was allowing the campiness to creep into your soul. Because I don't have a fear of flying, and so if that's anything they're going for, that with that tension doesn't really. I'm rubber, your glue, bounces off me and sticks to you. Shatner is batting 1,000. Dude he was made for that role, and probably outside of Captain Kirk, maybe T.J. Hooker, maybe not. That's probably his most famous role in his 90 years on Earth. So, well known for a reason. I already am kind of missing the bigger morality play at work. I think a lot of the earlier episodes I picked, part of the reason is just because I like digging into the soil of all that and messing around. And this didn't really have that. But I really enjoyed it this time around. And Donna did a good job with a lot of the mood setting and whatnot. So I'm going to go up to 8. Pig people proclaiming personal preference. What was your problematic?
Wow, that was like
proclaiming personal
like 10
preference.
episodes ago.
Yeah. Sorry, that one was more memorable to me, I guess. I'll go 8.0, and it feels a little strong. In the past, I haven't really enjoyed the episode, but it was really good, dude. Shatner is, if you give him the right role and just that bread of him going through 8 different emotions in 8 seconds was fantastic to watch. So yeah, I'll go with 8.
If you give Shatner bread, he'll give you an emotional sandwich. Stars, what will you rate this?
So there's always that trepidation when you're approaching an episode that's iconic as this, of like, okay, but how can it possibly stand up to the pop culture shadow that it's been cast? And it's like, okay, yeah, no, there was a reason that this has been so ingrained in pop culture consciousness, not just because of the good twist, but because it's just a really good portrait of like anxiety. Like, you mentioned, I don't have fear of flying. I'm not afraid of flying at all. Like, every time I'm on a plane, I'm like, yeah, there's a tiny little bit of like, not of anxiety, but I don't even I get more worried about trains, honestly, and it's like
I
I'm
don't
not
love
worried
a
about
train.
trains
Give me a
either.
train.
It's-
That's even
Yeah.
safer than cars.
but yeah, like I don't have I have very much more existential fears. But it almost doesn't matter. It's just about fear in general and about anxiety. It doesn't have to be about fear of plane. That's just the one they picked. They could have very easily just had it be that he was on a boat and he's just like, there's something out there coming to get me. It's like, it could very easily. It's easy enough to reframe it to be
I
whatever.
don't remember Shatner in Jaws, but okay.
I feel like you could fit in that actually. I feel like he wouldn't have been a bad pick. I would probably have to give this 8.5 murderous monkeys mutilating plane fuselages out of 10. I wasn't expecting to like it as much, and I keep on being surprised at how good of an actor Shatner is, even though one of my favorite movies is Wrath of Khan, and I know how good of an actor he is. It's just a case of he plays anxiety very well for a man whose primary role is known for his confidence. He just does a very good job at it.
This is 64. How many years?
So this is when The
between
Cage
this
was
and Wrath
filmed.
of Khan?
67 was when Trek started.
No,
Wrath of
between
Khan
this
was
and Wrath of
63.
Khan.
82.
This would have been, yeah, it was 82. So that would have been what?
20 years. I mean, that's a
20
long
years.
time to hone your craft, actually. So for him to do this well 20 years beforehand is impressive.
Yeah.
Definitely. I enjoyed this a lot. I mean, it's not just us like looking at Shatner in depth, but I was impressed by his acting. I liked the balance of the fear. I liked the approach of the mystery.
The balance of terror, one might say.
One Oh, let's see. That would have been the better name of this episode.
Also written by Richard Matheson.
Indeed.
Oh, really?
There you go.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of The Enemy Within.
There you
Damn it. That would have been a great...
So close. But yeah, given that, I enjoyed it a lot. Yeah, there were some bits like obviously the costuming wasn't great, and I'm happy to forgive time and place and era of filmmaking for that kind of thing. I've watched enough Doctor Who and Star Trek to know that occasionally the costumes you just have to kind of go like, all right, that's just what it is, and it could be better, but hey, I know they had budgets, so I always let that slide. I enjoyed it a lot. I've been go balance. I think I'm gonna go 8.7. Yeah, I can't think what costs it a point is probably just like Otto said, a little bit of pacing. Could have made the mystery a bit more mysterious rather than being too overt. So I kind of agree with that. But yeah, 8.7 from myself. So this.
I kind of want to see this episode with him in her wig, like just play it straight, but with the wig. I feel like it would add a lot on a rewatch.
It would. So this is 8.4 from the three of us, so that's pretty high. We've not had a single Twilight Zone episode lower than a 5, so everything has had merits at some place.
The lowest should have been The Hitchhiker, right?
And, that was The Hitchhiker, yeah, followed by A Nick of Time. So the other Shatner
Well,
one.
stay tuned for next week because we may hit that note.
Exactly. Okay, so Mr. Serling, please, what are we watching next time?
Rod's in the sanitarium, so I don't have anything prepared. But tune in next week for The Mighty Casey, which IMDb has rated the lowest episode of season 1. So see if we think it's that bad of a stinker, or will we enjoy it?
Well, we'll see you next time, and stay hard.